Welcome to Moving People Forward with Mark Elfstrand. This program is a series of conversations on commonly seen challenges in everyday people's lives. We hope you'll be inspired by the stories you hear today. Perhaps you know of someone who would also benefit. Be sure to share the program link with a friend. Now, here's Mark.
Well, you have likely seen the important work that dogs do in behalf of our U.S. military. I mean, they're deployed worldwide to support the war on terror, to help safeguard military bases, to, well, detect bombs even and other explosives before they inflict harm. But there's another important work that some very special trained dogs do for our servicemen and women, and it's called the Lutheran Church Charities Kare-9 Military Ministry. These dogs serve our military veterans and their families in many places, including VFWs, VA hospitals, homes of veterans, and even yellow ribbon ceremonies. With me today on Moving People Forward is Jim Morrison, the director of the LCC Kare-9 Military Ministry. And with that, Jim, good to have you with us today.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be here.
You're a military veteran yourself, as I understand it, huh?
I am, yes, sir.
Tell me about your service.
I often say that I really was not in the real Army. I served in the Army Security Agency, which is even no longer in existence. I was a German interpreter translator. I spent a little over a year in Monterey, California, which was very tough duty.
Yep.
Learning German.
Yep.
Going to school 6 hours a day, 5 days a week to learn German.
Yeah.
After that, I went over to West Berlin. In between that and going to West Berlin, I got married, and my wife followed me to West Berlin, and we lived there for a little over 2 years. And our first child was born there, and I had wonderful duty, and it was a great experience to live overseas for that amount of time.
So you would advocate anybody who, needs to understand what it means to suffer, to go and spend a bit of time in Monterey, California.
Monterey, California is a beautiful place. It is. It's not the Southern California climate. It's closer to the San Francisco climate.
Yeah.
But it was. As I said, it was tough duty.
Yeah. Well, before joining Lutheran Church Charities, I understand you also were a part of another rather interesting regiment of Ethan Allen.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that.
Yes. My family and I, my grandfather started our family furniture business during the Second World War. And my father and uncle, when they returned from their military service, joined him. And in 1976, we opened our first Ethan Allen store in Olympia Fields, Illinois. And we, in 1988, opened a second store in Orland Park, Illinois. And so from the time I left the Army in 1971 until 2008, I think it was, I worked in the Ethan Allen furniture business, in the family furniture business.
Now, you need to know that this is not Ethan Allen. Were you able to determine that?
I knew that immediately as I walked in the room. Yes.
It's what we could afford, right, for the show.
It's fine.
So anyway, thank you again for being with us today. Well, on one of our earlier programs of Moving People Forward, we actually have talked about the Comfort Dog ministry of Lutheran Church Charities. But you are in a different aspect of the ministry. How so?
Well, we focus on serving military veterans, their families, and active duty men and women in whichever way we are called upon to do. As you mentioned in the introduction, we do that by visiting VA hospitals. We go to Hines VA Hospital 8 times a month to visit the veterans there. We go to VA centers, Jesse Brown and Mantino. We go to veterans events, VFWs, American Legions. We go to parades and ceremonies. We go to not oftentimes, but occasionally we are called upon to go to funerals, military funerals. And it's always a great honor to do that and to be a part of that. And it's always interesting to see that our dogs have been so well trained that they usually do not startle when that 21 gun salute goes off. So they're very well trained, but we will do anything that we can to help serve the veteran community and their families. As you said, we visit people in their homes. I got to visit a couple of weeks ago a 98-year-old World War II veteran in his home who was homebound. He and his wife couldn't get out, and it was a great visit. And hearing about his time in the service in Germany in World War II when he got to be this close to General George Patton.
Wow.
So
yeah.
that was his highlight of his service career.
I bet he loved sharing that too.
Yes,
huh?
yes,
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
did.
Now, you were up pretty early this morning.
I was up very early.
Yeah, and what
this
was
morning.
the purpose of that early rising?
We have been privileged to be involved with the Honor Flight Chicago, which is a organization that puts on a trip to the military and historic memorials in Washington, D.C. for veterans.
Yes.
It's free of charge to those who travel. They have a group of loyal supporters who help stand the cost of that. And they started out doing this for World War II veterans, and the reason was that World War II veterans are disappearing. The statistic you hear usually is about 1,000 a day pass away.
Oh my goodness.
So they're becoming few and far between. And they wanted to honor them by sponsoring this flight. So we were out there this morning at 4 a.m. to see off about 105 veterans who were leaving for Washington, D.C. It's a grueling, long day. Like I said, they have to be there at 4 a.m. and tonight they will get home back. They'll return back to Midway Airport about 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
So it's a long day for anyone.
Yeah.
And especially we had about 6 World War II veterans on there. So these men are all 90 years old plus. So they are not children anymore. So
Yeah.
it's a tough day. And that's a tough day for me, for heaven's sakes.
Well, my wife and I have been at Midway when one of those groups returned.
Yes.
And we didn't know what it was at the time and watched all these people with American flags waving and the patriotism that was displayed as these guys came back down the escalator after they came back from their journey. And with that, you've been doing this now for about 5 years. It seems like at many times it could be an emotional work. Is it?
Oh, very much so. Oftentimes we get to meet men and women who have been affected by their time in the military, particularly those who have served in combat.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. About a month ago, we were at a World War II reenactment here in the Chicago area.
Right.
And we had a man come up and sit down next to the dogs. He had a Vietnam veteran hat on. And he just sat there for about 20 minutes, just petting the dog and sobbing. And then without a word, he got up and left. That was it. So it was very touching to see that. It's very touching to see the effect that these dogs have on these rough old military guys who don't like to show their emotion very much, but they're very moved by the fact that Lutheran Church Charities has taken the time, the effort, and the money to train these dogs, to recruit these veterans, to go out and serve them in that way.
Yeah, well, it really would be an emotional thing to watch this happen, especially with people who obviously are processing life in perhaps a very difficult moment. We don't understand what's going on in the souls of people, but to have those kind of emotional reactions just hanging out with a dog is probably something to behold.
That's
We're
right.
going to talk more about this here in just a moment. We are going to take a short break, and then we're going to continue our discussion with my special guest, Jim Morrison, the director of Lutheran Church Charities Kare-9 Military Ministries. We'll pick up that conversation in just a moment.
God is our safe place and our strength. He is always our help when we are in trouble. This word of God in Psalm 46:1 says it all. God is our safe place. He is our strength. He is our help when we are in trouble. Whenever and wherever we are invited, nationally or internationally, Lutheran Church Charities' mission is to bring the mercy, compassion, presence, and proclamation of Jesus Christ to those who are suffering and in need. LCC is a ministry of presence, to be present with Jesus, to lift up people in times of joy and sorrow, in prayer, and by passing through donations of dollar per dollar to those in need. Through our K-9 ministries, we respond and deploy with boots on the ground and paws within 24 hours, often sooner. of any crisis or disaster situation we're invited into. You see, for us, the bottom line is make it a difference by being present. For people who are suffering and in need with that mercy, compassion, presence of Jesus Christ. Thank you again for allowing us the privilege to stand alongside and serve others. Jesus and your partnership make that possible to touch thousands of lives.
This is Moving People Forward. I'm Mark Elfstrand. We're discussing how a group of golden retrievers bring comfort to our military veterans. My guest is Jim Morrison, and Jim is the director of the Lutheran Church Charities Kare-9 Military Ministry. So let me come back to the question about this is veterans serving veterans, right?
Yes, it is.
Why is it important that a person be a veteran to help a veteran?
You know, it was discovered that veterans will talk with and interact with another veteran much more freely than they will with a non-veteran. And it's much like many professions. We have a language that's in common. We have an experience that's in common that you wouldn't have with a person who's not a veteran. So you'll see that our veteran handlers all have the military cap that they wear that usually signifies what unit they were in, whether they served in Vietnam or whatever. And you get an meet. And what happens often is you will meet a person who will say, "Oh, you were in that unit, so was I.
Oh.
When were you there?" And automatically the conversation begins. And so you've got this bond, you've got this connection right away. And you can talk about things. Like I said, I was in the Army Security Agency. I don't meet many people who were, but I met a guy today who had the same cap on I wear. And so we had a bond right away.
Yeah.
We started talking about where he was, where I was, and so on.
One of the things that must concern you, and of course every other veteran, is just the number of suicides that seem to have increased in recent years. Any thoughts on maybe even how the comfort dogs might in some way have an impact on that? In a good way, obviously.
Yeah, you know, we hold our dinner every month called 22 to
Yes.
help raise awareness of that. We have guest speakers who often speak on that topic. Like I said, our dogs visit Hines VA Hospital, and one of the places we go is to the mental health unit,
Okay.
where those veterans are being treated for things that have bothered them about their time in the military.
Yeah.
In many cases, you know, I think that the dogs can offer a very temporary remedy. Certainly isn't a remedy that's going to equal what
Right.
professional help can give them, but at least they give the veteran the opportunity to start talking about what's going on, because that's what we see happen.
Yeah.
We go out, the person will connect with the dog, sit there, and pretty soon they're talking about themselves
Yeah.
and what's going on.
What kind of training? I mean, you use volunteers for this work that you're doing, right?
Yes.
So what kind of training do they get so that they can enter into this kind of an environment and maybe process life with these vets?
Well, the training consists mainly of our dog handler training
Okay.
that all of our dog handlers go through. There is a relationship type training that goes on in that.
Yeah.
How to pray with a person should you need to do that.
Okay.
Should you feel the need? And you know, Mark, I'm going to tell you that it's been my experience that I have never had a person refuse prayer.
Yeah.
Regardless of the situation, if I say to a person, "Could we pray about that?" No one has ever said no. So it gives us that opportunity to bring our Lord into the whole mix of things.
Right.
But again, if we did not have the dog, the connection would never be made in the first place.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
If we had a bunch of veterans that went out with shirts on that said Lutheran Church Charities Military Ministry
Right. They'd
and
probably
so
go.
on,
Yeah.
and sat around at a veterans event, people would look at us and go, "Oh, that's nice," you know.
Right.
but nobody would really engage us.
Yeah.
But when the dog is there, it just serves as that bridge that opens things up for people to start to talk to us.
Yeah, right at the very beginning of our program, I was mentioning how many assets the dogs bring into the environment for the military in terms of saving lives. But those are usually German Shepherds, aren't they, to a large degree?
They are German Shepherds, or they're dogs that look like a German Shepherd that's called a Belgian Malinois.
Okay.
That's the dog you've probably seen most associated with the military.
Okay, but you use Golden Retrievers.
Yeah.
And what's so special about them?
They're approachable, they're recognizable.
Ah.
It's what we started with here at Lutheran Church Charities in the
Yeah.
Comfort Dog program, and it's the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay.
So they work, and it is almost never that a person will come up to us and not have a golden retriever story to tell us about themselves,
Yeah.
whether they've owned one or whether a
Right.
family member has owned one. So they're very recognizable dogs. They're fairly easily trained.
Mm-hmm.
Our trainers often tell us that the humans are harder to train
I
than the
see,
dogs.
Yeah.
So-
Well, for those who have seen any of the Comfort Dogs in action, these Golden Retrievers, most of them that you see, all of them actually have vests on. But it's interesting that it's just not one vest for all the work that they
Right,
do. Tell me
right.
about that.
Well, our standard Kare-9 Comfort Dogs wear a blue vest.
Yes?
Our Kare-9 military ministry dogs wear a camouflage vest. And our police ministry dogs wear a blue vest with the black police stripe on it.
But what's the difference in the kind of dog that you get or what they do?
None.
None. Okay.
None.
But some
They-
are triple vested, I've heard.
Right. But it's just that the fact that, again, the military ministry relates better to military people.
Yeah.
The police ministry, again, in the law enforcement profession, a fellow police officer will talk to another officer in a different way than he would talk to you or I.
Okay.
So-
Well, now, but isn't it true that, sometimes you just have to teach extra humility? I've seen one of the triple vests going around kind of bragging. That I'm the triple.
It's hard to teach a dog not to be humble. You know?
Yeah.
It's
Especially if they get all that good attention.
especially when they're as
huh?
beautiful as they are, right?
Yeah, right. How many deployments are you doing a year?
Oh my.
Do you calculate that?
I'm going to say 200 plus.
Yeah. Wow. And all the areas we're talking about, the VA hospitals, the homes,
with the
everything.
military ministry, yeah, we're out 4 to 5 times a week
Yeah, that's pretty
on
impressive.
the average.
Yeah, and so the dogs are positioned in various parts of the country, but you cover everything geographically in the nation. When you get requests for the dogs, how do you handle that?
We do. For instance, usually when we get a request to go someplace outside of our area here
Yeah.
in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
we will try to use dogs that are placed in that geographical area.
Yeah.
If we need to travel with dogs, we will. Oftentimes, those cases are tragedies or disasters that have occurred in our world,
Yes.
and so people need to have a little comfort, particularly in those situations. So,
Now, before we wrap up today, we should note that each of the dogs that you work with have their own Facebook pages and business cards. And so, explain to people who are, observing us or hearing us today, how they can connect with these dogs and actually meet them at least at a distance.
I will tell you that, as you said, each dog has its own Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account, and you can like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter and follow them on Instagram. And I'll give you an example of how this works. When I'm out with Nigel, I will take a picture of Nigel interacting with a person that we're visiting or a person that's part of the group we're seeing.
Yeah.
I'll put that on Nigel's Facebook page,
Right?
and within seconds, literally seconds, people are reacting.
Huh.
They're liking it. They're saying, "Wow, it was nice to meet Nigel today," or whatever it was. So and these people are from all over the country and all over the world that follow these dogs. So it gives us a tremendous opportunity to reach people who we probably would never reach.
Okay, so
Otherwise.
if people want to make that connection today, how do they connect with you?
They can go to, for instance, for Nigel, if they wanted to go to his Kare-9, they just go to Kare-9 Nigel, go to Facebook, search Kare-9 Nigel, and there you go.
And that's Kare-9 with a K-A.
Kare,
Yeah.
space 9, Nigel.
And we want to assure people that you do know how to spell.
I do.
But
Well, most of the time, yes.
with the canines, they get special
Yes.
treatment on the name even.
Yeah.
So, well, Jim, thanks so much for
Thank you.
giving us the opportunity to learn more about this. And I trust that God's going to use what you do in a marvelous way in the days ahead. So thanks so much.
It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank
And
you.
that's going to wrap up our program for Moving People Forward today. My guest has been Jim Morrison, the director of the LCC, Lutheran Church Charities Kare-9 Military Ministry. I'm Mark Elfstrand. Woof!